Hey, what's up YouTube? Updated Fai deck list. I promised this one last week. I've been updating it quite a bit. I think I got like 75 games played with this by now. Some of these were actually in some competitive events. I got second place with Fai, by the way, yesterday at a small locals event, which is quite nice. But I've been upgrading and updating this deck quite a bit, and one of the things that I had to learn is that I had to move a little bit away from the consistent build with all the go against starter cards that I was running in the previous list that I shared on the channel, and instead I'm now a little bit gravitating a bit more towards the rupture cards like Level Burst and Breaking Point as our big payoffs, on top of the generic rise ups and the Phoenix forms that we already had going for us. So why did I divert into the rupture cards? Well, the main reason is that the very first reason is that these have a 3 block value, which is something that a lot of our generic combo starters don't have, and on top of that, things like Breaking Point, it's a 1 cast, it attacks for 5, so even if you don't have the rupture effect alive, Breaking Point is still a very good attack to go in with to finish your chain. For example, you can go into a 0 attack, go into your what's called your Searing Emberblade, and instead of fetching yourself a Phoenix Flame from the graveyard, you can just go for a Breaking Point instead. That way you are basically presenting 11 damage, and sometimes the opponents kind of expect you to play a Phoenix Flame next because they want to block it to stop your Mars trigger, and if you put a Breaking Point down all of a sudden, then you are presenting a Mars trigger that they need to double or even triple block for, which is very nice indeed. So when it comes to the big 3 Phoenix combo, the combo is very inconsistent, not gonna lie. You start the game with 1 in the graveyard, which means that you only have 5 cards in the deck that are actually a Phoenix Flame in some shape or form, which is the 2 Phoenix Flame in the deck itself and then the 3 Flame Call Awakenings to fetch them. Because we don't have as many Phoenix Flames available to us early on, I also opted out of the Rise from the Ashes red and yellow because they are a bit too inconsistent. I'm currently running 17 blues, but I do run the Belittle engine to be able to fetch myself an additional blue if need be. I need a lot of blues because the metas that I faced are a lot of ice heroes, and you need to have plenty of blues to be able to work your way through things like a Channel Lake Frigid and stuff like that, so I feel having the extra blues is definitely beneficial for this deck. On top of that, if you do have a Phoenix Flame or 2 in the graveyard already, you can always activate Fai's ability to pitch a blue, get a flame back from the graveyard in order to have like a certain combo starter like Flame into a Searing Emberblade into something else, which is very nice, and it can open up some potential for this deck. For the main equipment loadout, I am using the Spring Tunic. However, I'm currently testing to maybe use the First Fist or even the Sash that recently got released. Because having the Spring Tunic, like, even though you can theoretically infinitely keep using the tunic, in theory you only tend to use it once. So I'm kind of wondering if it's worth to trade off the early resource in favor of having, like, if it's worth trading off like the block value of the tunic in order to have like an early resource instead. I'm not really sure about that. I'm also experimenting with the Mask of the Pouncing Lynx because it does help to set up the Phoenix Flame turns a bit faster, which is the bottleneck of this deck to get like your big 50 damage combo turn. But if I do go for the Pouncing Lynx mask, I might need some attack reactions to make sure that the Phoenix form actually hits. Because currently, by the time you do your big Phoenix form turn, which is usually around turn 6 or 7, the opponent generally doesn't really have armor left to block with, which means that the Phoenix form almost always goes in unblockable, and you get that draw 3, which is quite nice. I opted to take the tome out completely, and I had 3 Uprisings before, as well as those Art of Wars. I took those out completely. I now have 2 Uprisings. The reason is that Art of War and Tome, they keep bricking the deck, and if you have a 3rd copy of Uprising, it also bricks you. I had that issue yesterday during a tournament that I was running 3, and I ended up drawing into 2 of them at once. That was very sad, because then suddenly they just become like a 0 for 2 damage card, which is just not good in general. As well, if you draw into them with a Mass of Momentum trigger, it just feels very bad because, well, you suddenly, how to say, like suddenly you draw into something that you can't really play, and usually you want to put a flame in your arsenal, and then the Uprising becomes awkward. It's just all bad stuff in general, so I might take these out completely in favor of maybe like an extra Salt to Wound, or even a third copy of Breaking Point to still have that 3 block that the Uprising presents, which was another problem with the Tome. The Tome doesn't block, and the Art of War doesn't block either. And a lot of people have been telling me like, yeah, but you can pitch it during your opponent's turn, banish a card, and then draw 2 in order to get the +1 block value. Well, I have an issue with that. For one, you need to pitch a card. So that's 1 card out of your hand straight away. Secondly, you need to play the Art of War, which is a 2nd card out of your hand straight away. And I think Art of War is great if you're in a deck that has a lot of 3 blocks, like Katsu generally does, because then your 3 blocks become 4 blocks. But because we have so many 2 blocks in the deck, you're basically wasting 3 cards to get 2 in return that then get like a +1 boost, which for the most part, like 50% of this deck is gonna be boosted to 3 instead of 4, which just makes it bad in general. It's just bad value. Like, Art of War kept bricking me, and therefore I stopped using it. I was testing the Kodachi's build. I have a 2nd Fightlist coming to the channel soon. That one is more focused on having almost entirely 3 blocks, some defense reactions, and ruptures together with Kodachi's in order to go like attack Kodachi, rupture. That build doesn't really use the Phoenix Flames all that much. You do have one in the graveyard to occasionally bring back if you're flooded with reds, but that's pretty much about it, everything that you're gonna do with that card. Having Fai as a Kodachi build is quite nice because you get access to Blaze Headlong, which is a very nice 4 attack, almost guaranteed go again, and you can still play your Belittle engine and stuff like that. So the value Fai is a cool deck to play, but I'm not sure if it's better than the full-on combo Fai. I do think if people are going to run hate that hates on the Phoenix Flames, then it's probably better to run a version like that. Take 2 Phoenix Flames out as well as the Rise Ups and the Phoenix Forms, and just playing a more value-centric fight list, which is quite nice. In terms of sideboard, we have the 3 tasks for the Lexi matchup, as well as the Command & Conquers and Erase Face card for the Prism matchup. I also run 2 Time Snap Potions just to have a better, a slightly higher winning chance against Prism, because if they just Arclight Sentinel you at the wrong moment, it can be quite devastating for a deck like this, because you want to be able to get your big swings in, and they can very easily just Arclight Sentinel on your 3rd chain link in order to blank out your potential Rupture card, which is quite sad. Tasks, at first I wasn't a fan of it, and I took them out and just put like extra blues in the deck, but now I quite like it for 2 reasons. Like, first of all, you can get rid of a Frostbite if Lexi puts it onto your side of the field, as well as all team if this is a graveyard, but also if they have a Channel Lake Frigid on the field already. What you can do is you can pitch a blue, play the Tar, and then you are presenting a 6 attack which costs 3 that later on gives you some value back by getting rid of a Frostbite, which is very nice. We have the Shuko in here for those annoying on-hit effect decks. So the Shuko is a 2 block, very nice, as well as the Flame Scale Furnace. Furnace generally you aren't really going to use for its effect. This is purely here for the block value. You can block 3 damage total with this, so that's pretty much 2 on-hit effects, so you can block over the course of an entire game, which is very nice. But if you do have a full red hand, you can always do something like you pitch a red to play something like a Mounting Anger, for example, and then you pitch another red in order to activate the Flame Scale Furnace, and that will allow you to go in with the Searing Ember Blade as well, which then makes a full red hand a little bit more consistent, a little bit more valuable. Or, of course, you could pitch another red to go in with another 1 attack, and then you have 1 resource floating to get a flame back from the graveyard to present a Mass Trigger with a full red hand, which is also rather nice. There are some ways that this is useful. For the most part, if you don't really need to block as much, the tuning is just better to go in general. I run 3 Arcane Barrier. I have a significant amount of Kano players in the groups that I play with. If you don't have that many Kano players in your group and you have something like maybe Briar players or stuff like that, you could theoretically take out like 2 null rune pieces in favor of something like what's the thing called? The fuck down that takes go again away from non-attack actions, which could be rather nice as a anti-Briar attack. I haven't really tested that. It's just something I'm spitballing off the top of my head, so keep that in mind. But I face a significant amount of Kanos. Having the 3 Arcane Barrier is rather useful to me, especially in a deck like mine where I run more blues than most of the Fightlists out there. And you can always opt to put the Time Snap potions into the deck if you so please, because that way you have access to some additional blues in order to pitch. It's not great that they don't have a block value, but against Kano you're generally not really blocking all that much anyways. So what are the cards that you side out if you do put stuff in? Well, the main ones that you want to take out the deck are the Engulfing Flame Waves. Those especially, they are very niche. I'm even considering taking them out entirely from the deck because I haven't really gotten any value out of them at all. I like them because if you play them early on, it kind of forces a double block, and then if you play your hand well, you can sometimes go in with a Phoenix form with 3 flames, and then the Phoenix form becomes unblockable because they already spent so much of their resources to block the Flame Weave, which is rather nice. So that's why I am playing this, but it's just a dead card in most situations. Like 2 resources for a 5 go again is rather bad value in general, and it's a 2 block, so I'm not 100% sure if I'm gonna keep this. I might just get rid of it entirely at some point, to be honest. But for the sideboarding, you want to take these 2 out for sure. And then it kind of depends on the matchup, but usually I tend to trim down stuff like the Rising Resentments a bit, or depending if it's like an ice matchup, I trim down the Mounting Angers a bit to bring some stuff in. Against Lexi, for example, I just take out 3 Mounting Angers and put the 3 Tars into the deck and just call it a day, just put the equipment there and done. I might actually, against Lexi, in the future even take out the Engulfing Flame Waves in order to bring the Time Snap potions in. The reason why I'm not sure if that's the correct move, like for one, you increase your blues in the deck, which makes it kind of nice against those on-hit effects, like I forgot the name, the one that makes you discard or you pay 1, which is rather nice to have some additional blues, but it doesn't have a block value, which makes it awkward again, you know what I mean? So I'm not really 100% sure if that's something I really want to do. But against Lexi, I tend to take the Mounting Angers out, I put the Tars in. Against Prism, it's usually the Engulfing Flame Waves that get cut first, and I like the Mounting Angers in that matchup, so instead I tend to usually get rid of like something like a couple of blues, usually the 3 Rising Resentments, because having less blues against Prism is perfectly fine. So I take out the Flame Waves, I take out Resentments, and then I need 2 more cards, which is usually like a trade-off that I'm not really sure what to take out. Most of the time I just end up cutting the Uprisings and put the Time Snap potions in, but it kind of depends on my mood. I'm still trying to find the sweet spot of what is good against a Prism deck in terms of sideboarding. Once I know how to sideboard perfectly against the deck, I'll be sure to share that over on my Patreon and such straight away. In case of All Team, kind of a bad matchup. Like, I think most of the All Teams games I played, it was a loss. So I think at this point we just need to accept that All Team is a very bad matchup and almost an auto loss for this deck against a good All Team, I need to mention. Like, if you're not the best All Team player, you might not really know how to handle all these massive chain links that get thrown your way, but against All Team it's a bit iffy. Kano, just bring in your 3 Arcane Barrier and leave the rest as is. You might even want to bring in the Erased Phase instead of the Engulfing Flame Waves, simply because this takes the Wizard keyword away from cards, if I'm not mistaken, which can be significant for the Kano matchup in general. And I think that's pretty much all the decks out there. If you're up against an aggro deck that wants to raise you, just keep everything as is. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is. Like, just work your way towards a big stubby hammerous combo turn and you should be able to win with ease with this deck. Anyways, that's all for me for today. If you want to support me, the best way to do it is to join my Patreon or to buy a playmat over on kuganegaming.com. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you had a lot of fun watching this deck. It's a bit of a mess because I'm having way too many projects on my hands right now. I'm doing coaching, I'm helping to optimize a bunch of decks for some people that made donations to the channel. So I have way too much stuff on my hands, so the editing isn't as good as my videos used to be. But I want to get these out to everyone as soon as possible so you can all start building the deck the proper way and not the goldfishy bad deck decks that I keep seeing floating around that say they have tested their stuff, but in reality they really didn't. Anyways, thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon. Take care.